we'll make this as fun and easy as possible, and definitely learning how to wet on wet, a little bit more wet on wet. And some of you guys have been playing on some of the oversized flowers. This is definitely the same sort of thing. This is what I wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit more of that wet on wet, so that when you go and jump on those big oversized flower petals and you're trying to get in those different shades of colors, that hopefully playing around with different assignments, something like this, will definitely help you with that. Right? Loosen you up a little bit more. So what I did here, guys, definitely sometimes we have canvases and things that don't turn out as nice as we thought. We didn't like it. We want to, don't want to throw the canvas away. You've seen me maybe do this a couple projects where I will just sand everything all down and then I'll throw some gesso or even chalk paint, guys. If you have chalk paint, that works really good too, to just blank it right out again. And the nice thing about it is that it actually becomes even smoother surface for you. So when you're starting to do some finer lines or more detail, little strokes, sometimes the weave of the canvas definitely gives you that little bit more bumpy look. So I'm not sure if you guys can see in the camera, the texture of those little weaves, right? So I didn't do much on this one here. Right, just took the canvas out, started painting on it, and you can still see some of those cross checks of it. So definitely sometimes giving it a couple coats of paint and sanding in between, and then starting off with a more prepared surface, right? You're going to see maybe a little bit difference in your stroke work being a lot easier and smoother and less bumpy, and not worrying about filling in all those little holes, right? So that's definitely a plus. Sometimes having that extra layer, not necessary. Like I said, I did do it the first time without any kind of gesso, but I wanted to use up some of my canvases that I didn't like and paint on them again, right? You can do it as many times as you want, really, right? Use them up and just keep playing and practicing, and then keep the ones that you really like. Alrighty, so yeah, definitely just starting with a blank canvas, white. Usually we play around with sponges, but I thought I would do something a little bit different with you guys again today, and definitely we're going to be using all brushes. Right, so definitely we're going to start with a big 3/4. If you have a 16, you can use that, a 12, and maybe a liner brush is all you're going to need for today's project. Alright, a little bit of tape just to hold our pattern in place. And if you've got the 11 by 14 canvas, or maybe you got a little bit bigger, what you're going to do is just extend these. I tried to make it as big as possible for you, so you definitely might want to extend the window up a little bit higher. You can definitely extend the porch railing down a little bit lower. You'll see that my pattern is much smaller than my painting, right? So we will have to get maybe a ruler out to extend things a little bit, finish off, it's just a very loose window, just roundish kind of, and hopefully you guys will be able to pencil in some of those areas. Right, so basically if you've got the same size as me, right, you can go, if you're bigger, then go down a little bit lower there and try to fill up a little bit more around it. So I printed this off from the PDF, so it's the exact same size you guys are going to get. I wanted to double check to make sure that my pattern was the same size from the printout. Right, so you want to maybe have a finger or so space on the top, and then maybe about 2 fingers on the side, right? So that you have some open space a little bit more on this side than you do on this side by the time we finish drawing on a little bit extra width to it, right? If you had a small 10 by 8 and you're using it the exact same size of the page, it's not a bad thing to cut that window off and just do it on purpose where you're cutting that window off. Right, so you can definitely still take advantage of this pattern on a couple different sizes. Go a little smaller, go a little bit bigger. All right, so we're just going to use a little bit of tape here to hold this in place. So that's the top. One over at the side. Take our graphite paper, dark side down. And then get in all these these lines. And I didn't do very straight lines, guys. You just have to do markers lines, right? You don't have to be super straight. You're going to be able to paint those lines a little bit straighter just to get you started. But definitely, if you want, you could use a ruler to help get these lines a little bit straighter. Just try to find your spots, right? And then that way these will be a little bit lighter. Don't necessarily follow my pattern if it's a little bit crooked. It might be a little bit quicker too, right? So yeah, just follow all the lines. Right. Just going to use that at the very bottom here, and then I'll probably freehand more of that circle. Right. It's hard to see with the ruler in your way too. Okay. Come over and get some straight lines on this side here a little bit, just before it turns into a curl. Okay. And then this is all going to get covered, guys. Right. Follow that along. Just know that these are all just separation lines of different colors that I did for my... Okay. A little bit quicker. I know this one definitely is a little bit crooked. I was trying to make a pattern from my painting, so it was a little bit bumpy in spots. Okay, so use a ruler here just to guide you a little bit straighter. Right, and now we can do our window. I like doing all my lines in the same direction first. That way you're not flipping your ruler this way and that way and this way and that way. Okay, so this one goes right down to the bottom. Here. So I'm using a pen right now because it gives me a stronger line than a pencil, but definitely if I'm going to go and add to this, I'm going to change to a pencil so I can erase it. You don't want to really use a pen on here. Okay. That's all the different layers of the window. And then the steps, definitely, there's lots of little lines here too. So you can start off, this one's supposed to be basically a little bit straight, and then this one's on an angle. And this one's straight and on an angle. Should be straight up and down with your canvas. On an angle, and straight. Okay, so that's all your stairs going up and down. And then we're going to do all our stripes. And like I said, it is a little bit on an angle. There might be an area where it might be skinnier on this side than it is on this side, but that's the angle of the perspective of the person standing on an angle, right? So those steps are not going to always look perfectly straight, right? So definitely playing with perspective of farther away and closer. You know, it is definitely a tricky subject to try to draw out. Trying to get all those kind of straight. But definitely with the pattern, guys, I want you guys to learn mostly is the wet on wet and using one color on your brush to be able to add extra shading, tipping that little bit of extra color with floating medium, and getting as many different shades in here as possible. Alright, so definitely down the road maybe you can have some drawing classes. I did do one where I taught you a bit more with the Santa Claus, Old Saint Nick, if you guys want a little bit more drawing. Okay, and then this is just like a brick kind of extra little bit of the wall, right? Sometimes you have the main wall and then you have a little bit extra cement. Same material as what this is, but you know, it's up to you guys what you want to see that as. Right? I just added a little bit of trim look to it. Alright, so again, just adding a little bit of an edge where you put your hand, your railing. Alright, so just work on all the pattern areas first, and then once the pattern areas are done, then we can take it off and then we can add to it a little bit more. Right. And you can make these flower pots anywhere, so that's why I didn't add them into the pattern here for you guys. So definitely you can alter this a little bit. I talked about in my last live that I was doing that I had an afterthought of maybe I should have put that flower pot here because these two are too close together. So maybe we'll do that today just to make things a little bit different. Right, and this was just the edge of the flower pot that I caught half that circle there. Alright, so I'm just going to lift this up carefully, scratching it. This is the only thing about the chalk paint is that you definitely do get some dirty marks sometimes. Alright, so yeah, I got all my pattern there. And then I'm going to grab a pencil and just come down a little bit wider than that T, right? So you're going to add a little bit more to make it a T. Again, a little bit more of a ledge here, and then I decided to put in a window box. Right, so you don't even hardly see that ledge when we're done. But if there's little peaks of it that show up, then you can definitely still paint it and then see how it works. Right, so again, I'm going to put this wall straight up, just to add to it, make it bigger. And same with the window. Right, so just add a little bit more up. Alright, so, and then same with down here below. So just follow your line that you gave yourself and extend it. Right, so this one should be a little bit more straight down. Right, that back wall is on an angle. This one here should be pretty much straight up and down. Right, looking at you. Maybe a little bit on an angle. Right, and then right at the bottom of our step, if you notice the steps are getting slightly bigger and bigger and bigger as we get to the bottom here. There's the back. And then I just went straight across. Right, so this is where all our little stepping stones are going to be and sidewalk, and then we can definitely add a basket here. Oops. And so right here was the side of that basket here. And this one's just like a round kind of basket. And it's sitting a little bit lower than that line. Alright, so just any kind of basket you want to make. Pop that right in there. Right. look at it a little bit straighter. Okay. I'm sure once I always just sketch and just get the lines there, guys. It's not like really trying to draw and make anything look perfect. It's just kind of putting those markers in where you want to save space for, right? Trying to clean this up a little bit from all my nails going through the carbon paper. Okay, so we can definitely choose to put a small little pot over here. So you want this to extend just on the outside of the step here. Right. Pencil that in if you want a little bit to propose to put another plant there instead on the step. So just a little bit of a bowl look. They're far away, so they're small. You don't have to see a lot of definition. Alright, does that sound like an easy enough plan to get you guys started? Yeah? Okay, just get rid of all that eraser. And we'll start off with our paint, which we're using Pablo. It shouldn't take too long, and hopefully it'll be a nice quick project for you guys tonight. Alright, engine red. Violet pansy. For now. And a little bit of white. Right? And I always put a little bit of white because I know that I might need it again down the road. And I like to add white a little bit at a time so it keeps it nice and fresh. Right? So we were going to be using quite a bit of the other colors, but not too much white, just a little bit for now. Right? So we're going to start off with adding Pablo and engine red. And I didn't even wet my brush, guys. It's actually dry. I don't want it to be watered down. It's a brand new brush that's been washed and sat and dried overnight, so it's nice and dry. Okay, and I'm just going to multi-load those two colors for now. Add just a smidgen of white in there to lighten up the Pablo. Because the only area that I really want a little bit of white in the Pablo is at the very top, and then as we work our way down, we're not going to be having any white. Alright, so we've got two little areas here. This pillar is all white. So we can definitely start by going sideways here a little bit. So you got the Pablo at the top. And you're going to keep picking up that Pablo so you have just a very warm Pablo. Don't worry about that. We can always fix that later. Right? Or we can always erase it with a wet, clean brush, but definitely it'll be easy enough to paint over if it's dry later. Right, so I definitely just want quite a bit of Pablo, right, starting on this side of the window, and then once I've got the coverage, I'm just going to go a little bit on an angle because I do want a little bit of a darker red coming along the left side here, and a little bit lighter onto the Pablo, onto the right side. Just a little bit of white. Get a little bit extra coverage. Right, and it's just a base coat right now. I definitely can go over it again. And then right under the window. Right, we want that nice strong Pablo. And blending into the reds. Right, just keep adding more paint. Get good coverage. And we don't want it too red, so make sure you keep adding more of that Pablo into it as you're working down. Okay, so I'm almost to the bottom of the stairwell here. Right, and then I'm going to come over to this side and do the same thing basically. Right, and all sideways, so that way if we see movement into the wall, it's definitely all sideways strokes. Okay. See, it's a little bit dry, just keep adding more paint. Right, sometimes I'll use my chisel to get that line straight. And just keep adding. So now as we keep moving down, we still got that little bit of Pablo still left. But now mostly I just want to start picking up engine red. Right, still wet on wet in here. You can merge into a little bit of that Pablo. Slow down, use your chisel to draw your line. Right, I'm going to put a plant here, so that's okay. And put a little bit of color there. Right, mostly red. Now into this section and really flatten out that brush, because you see if I go down and stop, I get these little chop marks. You're squeegeeing the paint. So I want to lay that paint just really flat as I can, back and forth, and smooth it out. Okay, so hopefully you can still see your pattern. Okay, getting that red in there. And now we're going to come over and pick up some of this violet pansy in the back area. So we have the little bit of Pablo up here, right? In the middle. Reddish colors. So we just want to pick up a little bit of that purple now, the red. And we're going to use this as a dark color to shade around. Well, you guys can see. I'm going to add some more later. Adding red. Get rid of these sponges, we don't need them. Don't need that anymore. Okay, so I'm just picking up red and then back loading into that pile just to pick up a little bit of purple. And you can definitely go back and forth to smooth it out a bit so that your shading doesn't look like a zigzag either. It's just going around the steps right now. Right, and then you're going to smooth off that line. Right, go back and forth, just above it. That's just adding that shadow line. Right, so hopefully you guys still see your line that we made here. Right, so you see how I just wipe it off if I have to. Just a little bit more purple on the side. Adding more red. I don't want to go around my proposed area here. Just loosely, guys, right? Don't worry about it. Adding a little bit more depth. Getting that purple into the red. Okay, just for coverage. And then what I want to do is come over and pick up some of this Pablo again. And you're going to use your chisel of your brush to follow this line that you did before you can't see it anymore. And give yourself a very subtle little stripe with the Pablo. Okay. just to give it that extra edge. I saw it in one of the pictures and I went for it, so oops. We don't want too much purple up here. We definitely want more red. Okay, a little bit of depth is okay. Right, you can change the walls to any color you want, really, if you wanted to. I'm going back up now, working my way up onto that Pablo area, picking up, see my dirty brush. I just keep picking up more paint. Okay, if you feel like you need to get up to the top now, we have to add just that little bit more white into the Pablo. Right, and it can be a little bit streaky looking. But I'm just going for coverage now, guys. I'm just going over it a little bit more. And adding a little bit more red. Right, very loosely picking it up. As I'm going moving down, now I'm going into picking up more red. Very loosely picking up those colors. Right? And then backloading or adding just a little bit of white. Not having a very clean look, right, in your plate. But not being afraid of those colors. Okay. So you can let that dry a little bit, and you can still add more if you want to add more, an extra coat to it. Okay, so this top area here is going to be a little bit backwards. So we have the lights up at the top here. So now I want to pick up the red and some purple. And I want behind here on this side of the wall to really recess it back a bit more, is I'm going to add that purple. It's not very straight. Okay, so I just wipe it off. And then as you're coming in behind here, you got to turn that 3/4 brush sideways. Right, see how I'm getting that color in there? If you want, you can definitely change to a smaller brush. But the more you play around and push yourself to manipulate this flat brush, right, getting that coverage with it. Okay. Again, coming up around the door with that purple. Just to add that little bit of shading. Okay, see, I'm running out of red. That's okay, but my purple line is still doing good. Okay, just to get that color behind. Now I'm picking up red. Flip, flop, flip, flop. And just to get that coverage. And don't forget your sides, guys, if you're doing a wrap canvas, or even these small panels. Right, going around those sides while you have the color in your brush. And then that way you can just hang it with one of those little doohickeys there, plastic. Okay, going around my window again with the purple. Keep adding red. Right. More red. Just flip-flop with the back end of your brush. Right? When sometimes I don't want too much purple in there. I just want to kind of blend it away and get coverage with the red now. And I got a little bit of dirty purple hitting there, here and there. That's okay. Right? So it's mostly flip-flopping with the back part of my brush. Okay, so now I want to add some more Pablo into that red. Oh, went a little heavy. Add a little bit more red. Okay, so you're slowly getting a little bit lighter as we get to the back area here. Okay. Slow progression of that purple, and then you can definitely add more, guys. You're definitely going to add a little bit more shading around that wall. Okay, so it took me a couple layers of going over it, letting it dry, and then playing with it a little bit to get a really super smooth look. Right, slowly transitioning that color. Okay, so slowly now down as we're getting into this area here, we want to start having less purple. I went and picked some up. And more red, so you're starting to slowly move into that red here now. This can go up and down. Right, so I'm just getting that red in there. Come around my sides. And then again, we need a little bit of purple, just that little bit on the corner, mostly red, so that we can add that shading around underneath our flower pot now. Okay, so again, don't worry about if you're hitting areas, because we'll be able to cover that with the white and gray. Right, so we're going to go down, make sure you got lots of paint. Follow that shading line all the way down with the purple. Right, see I'm running out of red, but that's okay. Oops. My purple line is doing really good. I'm happy with that. And I'm running out of red. Okay, so now I gotta pick up that red. That in a little bit. Might be a little too close now. Okay, so we can slowly work that depth of the darkness from the purple out a little bit now. Just to give that red a little bit darker color. Oops. You see how I'm not worrying about it, right? Right? This is gonna dry and the rest is gonna cover. Okay, slowly coming into the red. And now I'm gonna go and just loosely tip my brush right into that Pablo. Right, we're doing a big area, guys, so you don't even have to blend it in. You can just kind of pick it up with the corner of your brush and work it into that red paint. Right, see those streaks of purple coming through? I'm gonna let them go. Right, it just makes it look a little bit more natural. Having some different colors in there. Alright, just gonna go around my edge. Pick up a little bit of purple. Okay. Make sure that I'm happy with my line there. And all these colors merge together really nicely, right? They won't fight with each other, they won't go brown, right? Because you're working on all warm colors, right? And this is where sometimes I went and picked up loosely some more Pablo and added a little bit more streaks of it as it was drying. It was starting to layer a little bit more. I was getting some irregular different colors coming through. Okay, so I'm just trying to add more to my sidewall here. And there we go. Okay, so that's mostly the bulk of it, of your base coating. Let it dry, see how it goes. Definitely there's more areas I gotta clean up. And when I get in with a little smaller brush to do the railings and all the gray parts, it'll definitely clean all that up. Right. Stuck my finger in there. Little spot there. Right, so any areas that I felt like it just didn't have enough coverage or enough blending, right? I wanted to add a little bit more red. A bit more depth as it was drying. Right, playing with it. Add a little streak of purple in there, that's okay. Right, add a little bit more red. And a little bit wishy-washy, any areas, just go and add more. Okay. Alright guys, easy enough to do. Just try to not to put too much purple here. You can always go back over with your Pablos and reds. You can never keep up. Well, I've been trying to come up with some smaller, easier ones that maybe you guys can. Hopefully keep up with me. Miss Kathy. Alrighty, so what did I do next? I moved on to the steps, right? Well, we still have those colors in our brush. Okay, so I have that little bit of dirty brush still going on. I haven't put any water in my brush yet. Okay, so we want that little bit of dirty Pablo in there with some red, mostly. And then we're going to go in and put a little extra shading in there a little bit later. So hopefully there's still a little bit of remnants of purple in your brush, right? Because that adds the different tones to your red, making it more mulberry. Okay, so what we're going to do here with the steps is actually every other step was a darker color, and then coming in on the top part of the step, so because the light is hitting it, was a slightly lighter version of it. Okay, so we're going to start with the darker color first, and again what I did here was just using my chisel as a brush, going sideways with it, following the step, painting like a square. Taking advantage of that big brush really helps to get things done a lot quicker, right? And learning your stroke work. If feeling comfortable with pressure, right? And just slightly wet on wet, just fill it in. Okay, so I could have definitely went in and grabbed a smaller brush to try to do it all in one swoop, but definitely I think that it's a great trick to be able to utilize. Like I said, it's not just that little smallest amount of purple in your red, guys, just to make it a little bit more mulberry. Okay, so again, your box, right, start over a little bit longer. Right, and then just loosely fill it in. Flip your brush around. Right, so you always have the dark on the outside, a little bit lighter here. Doesn't matter which side you start on. But I am trying to get a little bit of that lighter red Pablo in the middle, and then a little darker area on the edge. Right, so just loosely work it in. Every once in a while I might be adding a little tiny bit of purple into that red. You see? Lots of really fast tricks. Well, you see how some of those areas are staying darker and lighter. Just a very subtle, different tone change. Okay. And then into this mixture now, we're going to add just a little bit of white into the Pablo. Right, so you're getting a very muted, a little bit dirty colors happening here. Hopefully you're not too red. You've got that mulberry kind of look going on. Just a smidgen of white into your Pablo side. And now we're going to come around and do the same thing, a little bit on an angle and in. Alright, so a little lighter version is going to look like the top of the step now. Okay, this is just going to be a little bit of a highlight area that we're going to add in again with our chisel. Just a little bit of white with that Pablo. You want to make sure that it's definitely lighter than the stroke before. Got your angle on this one. Right. Red's on the outside. And in. Still trying to encourage you guys to multi-load as much as possible and get all those colors in. Okay. And then we'll add a little bit more shading to define things. Okay, so here right on this highlight lines, right, this is the top, We're going to use our chisel again, just like we did down here. You can always use a liner if you want. And just put that little lighter color, right? We don't want too much white. But just again, that little lighter version of what we were playing with. Right? Don't worry if you extend. You can always wipe it off or come in with a little bit of purple. Right? Again, using our chisel. And then this one should be a little bit more pressure, right? Because as you're getting closer to the bottom of the stairs, they're getting slightly bigger. Alright, nice thick paint, not too watered down. Should feel like almost like foundation makeup in a way. Alright, so see how I got those different colors in there. A little bit more Pablo. Always adding a little bit of fresh paint helps keep it fresh. You don't need so much medium. And I really found that this is what helps keep that richness of the color, you know, making it look a little bit more like an oil painting. Right, putting really good pressure on here. Get that paint right in there, and then come in and side load just that little bit of purple. Okay, so we need to fix our step here a little bit. Let's go in, add a little bit more. Right, this is nice and dry here. Right, skimp in just that little bit more shading up the side of the wall. Right, I don't want too much Pablo here, I want red. Right, so I got lots of red, wet paint. I'm just going to pick up more purple. Smooth in that red. Right, guys, I don't want you guys to be afraid of paint. So this is why I'm doing this really recklessly almost. Very loosely. Right, showing you guys that you can definitely just keep with that dirty brush, right? I want more red mixture now, right? Wipe it off if you have too much paint in your brush. And you want to change the tone a little bit more. Flipping my brush around upside down so I can get that purple down here. Alright, so you can always go back and fix things. Pick up a little bit of Pablo. And fix your line again if you have to, right? Don't be afraid of the paint. Go over it as many times as you like. Okay, so we're pretty much done with all the reds and purples and Pablos. So we're going to start changing into the browns, Pablos, and if you have two brown or burnt umber, either one will work. Does this look easy enough for you guys that are watching? Right, just keep playing with those tones. Southwest vibe to it. Bobby really likes the picture when he saw it. Oh, nice. Yeah, a little bit of oldness to it. Not the typical square doors that we have today. And so if you just keep moving, you shouldn't have to blow dry anything. By the time you get back to work on any areas, it should be pretty dry. Right? So the one thing I want to do first here is my actual door. And we're going to pick up Pablo, and yes, it's still the 3/4 brush here. Okay, you get a nice Pablo and brown gradient going on. Okay, so no white in it right now. And we're going to follow that brown, right, starting up at the top, working our way around in the sides of that door to get that shading a little darker on the left side of the door. Okay, and then wet on wet, blending it in out a little bit at a time so that you're getting that little brown streaky look. Right? Doesn't have to be a perfect, flawless gradient. And again, just slowing down so that I can get my nice line straight here. And turning my brush so I'm getting the dark at the very bottom. Right? Mine's a little bit light looking, not so good coverage, but definitely playing with it, going back over it again. Right, so as we're moving into past the halfway part, this is where we can start dipping just a little bit of white into that Pablo. And still having more Pablo than brown, putting a little bit more pressure on the back part of your brush, so then that way you're just going and sneaking in, just picking up a little bit of that dark. And then with the light side, on this side, you need more paint. Right, keep adding more paint into your blending pile here. Now I'm coming around the outside here with the Pablo and lighter. If you feel like you need a little bit of medium, you can definitely put it in there. I'm just trying to show you guys that you can keep adding more paint, and working with a much thicker consistency. Right, and then going back and forth now to smooth it out. Really flat brush. Oop, got a good streak of white there. That's nice. Right? Flatten it out so that you're not squeegeeing off that color. Okay, once this is all dry, we can always go in and add just a little bit more shading. Alright, just keep playing with it, smooth it down. Okay. And a little bit more white in there. So this is where in the middle here we have an area, and again I just played around with my 3/4, using it to draw around the shape. Okay, so when we get those other lines again, we want them to be a little bit neater, we can definitely move to a smaller brush. But right now, we're just base coating a little bit of there. We can definitely use our chisel and just get those lines covered in with a little similar color to the door. Don't worry about the messiness. Make sure you're happy with that. Right? Not worried about that. Now I want just a little bit more red in there with the brown. You see that berryish kind of color? It's very warm red. And again, if you want to test yourself, you can always go in and add that with that same brush. Curl it around right up on the chisel. Really pushing you guys to try something different. And see if you can get a little bit looser with that brush. Okay. So you've got a real dirty blend of colors going on here, which is how I got those blends of colors. Okay. Don't worry if they're not neat looking. I'm gonna show you how to neaten all that up. Okay. So I'm just wiping off the excess out of here. Because I definitely want to pick up a little bit more of that white and Pablo and brown. I've got dirtiness going on here, a little bit of warmth from that red. It's going to disappear. We're just going to keep adding more Pablo and brown back in there. Okay, you see the different blends of colors I'm getting with this dirty palette? Okay, so I want to add a little bit more of that brown color. There's two stripes here. Did I forget a line? Yeah, I forgot a line. Okay, so we're just adding a little bit more of that similar color of the door. A little bit more white in that Pablo. Lighten it up a little bit. Okay. A little bit lighter colors there. Right, and then I'm going to add a stripe in there after. Alright. Here's definitely, like I said, you got this blend of colors going on. You got that little bit of redness in here to make it more berry, warm, a little bit more white. Right? Trying to get my blend on my liner brush. If you guys want to try and play around and getting that soft, dirty white color, then you can definitely use the liner brush to come around this one edge. And a little bit of Pablo, a little bit of white, a little bit of engine red for that berryness. Alright, really mixing some colors, not light enough. Add just a little bit more white. Alright, just the width of my brush, kind of as I'm going down. And a little bit more white. It's usually always easier to pull away from you. So if you're right-handed, you're going to follow it around. A little bit of thick paint. I'm running out of paint, that's why. A little bit more white. a little bit of white streak through there, you know, you can just leave it there just by picking it up. Right, just playing around with your colors. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Oops, that's too much purple. And this is how you get black. Right, so this brown and this purple really darkens that brown now, right? So that's why I got that really dark color there. Alright, so while we had that brown, whoops, we should rinse out our brusher a little bit. And then it makes it easier, guys. I'm going to show you again a little bit more with a smaller brush too. Right, we'll do the window trim. And we got to get into our browns and whites. A little tiny bit of Pablo. Right, more peachy brown, warm brown. And so I'm going to go right in the middle here to do this middle section here first. And then I could always go in with my liner and fix the other lines. Right. A little bit on an angle. Start from the bottom. So the dark is on the outside, on the left side. Back and forth. Work it in. And then going on the side now. Real soft, berry kind of peachy color you're creating. And the same similar color of white that we did here is what I did on the outside. Right, using your brush to create that line. Slide down. I'm just playing with a lot of different variations of these color blends that it comes from when you have the dirty brush going on. Trying to use your brush again. A little bit more white. A nice strong corner here. Right, notice how the window is a little bit wider on this side. Many areas I have little white streaks come through, I just try to leave them. Right. And this is not dark enough under here. And you can always go in and add that little bit more darker color. Alright, so we'll go in and add that more depth there later. And let that dry a bit. And then I added just brown here for now. Right, it has a little bit of purple in it, that's fine too. Get a little bit more darker. Let's just put the base coat in there. And then if you went wonky with your other line, this is, you know, again, you can use the other colors to try to straighten things up. Alright. We get some dark in there. We also need the dark in here. I mean, there's enough coverage, you still kind of see your lines. And then again, dirty brush, not wiping anything out. Add a little bit of Pablo, a little bit of white. And I'm trying to get that same similar color here around the edge here. Again, using the chisel of the brush. Straight up and down. Start at the top, work your way around, down. Oops, a little bit too wide. That's okay. And then under here, I just basically made it all like Pablo, because you're not going to really see much after you add your flowers. Oops, wipe out that white. Picking up a little bit more brown and purple. Okay. So you got your brown coming in and adding a bit of brown and purple. Right. Purple on the outside. You see how much more darker that looks now? Right, a little bit of depth in there. Basically all your shading is on the left side of the window, left side of the door, a little darker side to this side. Right. And in this inner side here, where you're chisel, you can use a liner brush, whatever you feel more comfortable with, guys. Pablo and white, just a little bit of brown. A bit lighter. Alright, so you try to slide your hand with the painting. Right, you can use your finger to brace yourself. Right, I need more white. So you're just getting all these different shades of different colors of the same blends, but some are a little lighter, some are a little bit darker. Some have a little bit more red in them. Alright, so that should be a little lighter there. They're all nice, yummy colors. A bit lighter there. Right along the top. And then you can fix your line. Right. Slow down. Okay, that's pretty much all for that. Again, I used a little bit of making anything I wanted to make black, I had a little bit of purple to the brown. And again, I'm going to use a little bit more of a chisel, darker line here just to make the illusion. Might be a little bit of lighter color in there with it too, that's good. Alright, can let that dry. We added just that smidgen of white in there, just enough to kind of look like there's a little bit of glow. Right, I add a little bit on the one side of my window as well. Just very light skimp of color. Just enough to say that you're just tickling it. I really didn't take a lot of time or thought to it. I just kind of kept playing with it the first time. And it just came apart. The hardest part was trying to decorate it with foliage after. It was really definitely, you know, just where do you want to put your plants? Right? And then I kept playing around with just adding more color, like, you know, softening in areas if it doesn't cover enough. Didn't softly blend into each other enough, right? I would just keep grabbing my colors and just playing with them, slowly merging them from the purple to the red to the Pablo. And so just keep playing with them to get that nice rich depth. Okay. I'm running out of Pablo. Right, so see how we're just adding that little bit of engine red on top of areas helps to merge them too a little bit. Right, so just play with these colors. You can't go too wrong. And in any areas that I went and missed, go in. Right, adding a little bit more red or shading, like if you're just loosely putting it in there. Right, so I want the one part of the wall more red and one part of the wall more Pablo-ish. Right, a little bit darker. Anywhere I just feel like I just need a little bit more coverage or tone difference, right? Just kind of play with it a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to add a little bit of medium gray to the pillars and our white, and we still have a bit of brown there. And yeah, again, definitely you can use the 3/4 brush. All right, just grab a rag. Make sure that you're cleaning your brush when you're really drying it well to get rid of all that water. All right, you shouldn't see any driplets. And what I did, guys, was pick up mostly white. All right, you're gonna dirty that white with a little bit of gray. All right, just a little bit. And then you're gonna come over and pick up just that little bit of brown on the tip. Okay, so hopefully you'll see that I don't have a lot of brown, but just enough, right? You want this back area to be a little darker. Just enough to kind of line this up a little bit and base coat. All right, keep picking up that little bit of brown on the edge to draw your shading in. Now you want to slow down a little bit so that you can neaten up any of those areas that you went over. Okay, it'll cover no problem. Keep adding a little bit of white in there. Right, so hopefully you see that I just dipped right into the white. I'm working on a big area. I can really loosely get that paint in there. Right, and get some streaky looks. So I still have this gray dirtiness going on in my white. Okay, follow along my shape. Right at the top of the ledge. And down. White. I worry all about the edges first. Right, back up and start over. If you're not happy with the amount of shading, just add a little bit more brown. Go over it again, slowly go. Get your coverage, keep adding white so that your brown will slide. And you can go back and forth and get that coverage. Just to move it in. You picked up a big blob, I just gotta go backwards to smooth it out a little bit. And then then slides sideways. Right. Come down at the top here. And you know, just have that little tiny bit of brown on the tip, guys. Just enough to draw with, add a little extra shading. Slowly, see how I'm just lightly touching it, and then I slightly put a little bit more pressure to flatten out my brush to get more paint out of it. Slowly add to it, keep going. Let some of those streaks come through. Right, and this is where we're going to put that other pot. Right. Just wipe it off. And again, I do that side trick here where you're going round, side, and down, and in. Follow it along. Right, making sure you get that dark on the edge just a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to finish down at the bottom. I want to put a little bit more shading underneath the shelf here. Oops, too much brown, and put it over here. And now I'm going to come fix this area here that I goofed on. Right, so like I said, just don't be afraid of the paint, guys. Right, a lot of people are commenting on some of the projects that we've done. And the biggest thing that I keep hearing too is, you know, having a hard time painting loose. Right, so it's not like you can't fix anything. Right, make sure that white's not too clean. Add more gray to it. Right, and that's going to help cool things off, right, from the burnt umber. Right, and now I can just fill it in the middle. Okay, take your time. Keep adding the paint. Just keep that shade there. And then on the other side, we're going to do a shading on reverse side too, right? So you want to put the shading line on both sides so it softens this corner. Nice. So hopefully you can see too how smooth this canvas is to work on too, with being that extra layer of gesso or chalk paint. Either or will work. Right, so I got my base coating in there, but I've got some areas that aren't so neat. Right, so you can always go in, guys, and go over them again. Right, I want a little bit more shading behind here. And just a little bit of movement. Let it streak. Alright, so there's your pillar, or the railing. And it's basically the same thing for the pillar. Alright, see how I'm grabbing just that little bit on these corners. Turn your canvas. Right, so this is like a big square. Right, you can add your shading that way. And I go in the other direction. Alright. If it's too dark, you'd always highlight a little bit more white in it. Come over, just grab a little bit more white. If you want to work it in just very lightly, and again, just kind of sputtering along, trying to leave some white streaky marks. Right. And I have a couple other areas here too, because this wall here actually comes down here and right here. You've got to cover this red mark if you made it. Right, so we're going to add a little bit more of that similar tone. Right under there. And under here, we forgot our red. Alright, so we got to come back into our smaller brush, maybe 12. And pick up a little bit of that red and Pablo. A little bit of white. Right, to dirty it. A little bit of purple. Just to add some more depth. A little bit more white. And trying to match that color over there. This was brown, so this is right here. It's a little bit more reddish color here. Hopefully that matches this one stripe here. Right, if you want to fix up anything. A little bit more white. Trying to go a little bit on an angle when I'm with a small brush. Oops. Let me go sideways a little bit more. Just adding a little bit extra coverage there. And I'm going to come in and fix this brown here a little bit too. Alright, so now that we've got that touched up, we can come over and pick up a little bit of brown and white with that little bit of Pablo. A little bit too gloppy there. Right. We should have went down a little bit lower here. Okay, trying to match the color of the door a little bit. And if your brush is too wet, that's where it usually will erase some of your color. So that's why I've been trying to work mostly with a thicker paint. Right. Okay, so I know you guys are saying it doesn't look like much now, but I definitely want to add a little bit more Pablo and white and brown. We need to darken this a little bit more here. Right, so this happens to a lot of us too, so I'm kind of glad that it happened here because, you know, I want you to show you that we can always go back and fix it. Right, I'm going to add a little bit more dark underneath. About the width of my brush. So dark on both sides. Makes things stand out a little bit better. And I can always straighten up anything I don't like. And get that line looking a little nicer. Anyways, I can always take my liner a little bit more too and fix up some of those lines. Okay, so down here, we haven't got to yet. We definitely need to add some white and some gray. And what I wanted to do was just make that dirty white. If there's a little bit of brown in there, that's great too. Just a little bit of light gray. And just give it some coverage for right now. Right, straighten up your line underneath here. This was a very light gray. Get some coverage in there. There's even a little bit of dirty Pablo in my brush right now. I'm telling you guys, you gotta play and embrace all the colors. Right? It just gives it a little bit more looser feel. Right? Can you see the little bit of Pablo I got in my brush by accident? Right? With the gray, mostly white and gray tone. Right, then I want to add that little darker gray to draw up with my line. Then I'm going to grab lots of white and pick up just that little bit of gray again on the edge. Okay, so we can draw that shading line in behind. And underneath. A little darker. Right? There's always going to be shading underneath your plant. Okay. So then once we got these base coated, then while it's still kind of wet, you're going in, picking up a little bit of brown, a little bit of gray, right? Soften that gray down with a little bit of warmer brown. And just doing it loosely, guys. Just gonna bring it over to the side a little bit. Okay, so our stones are really random circles, right? You don't want them to be perfect. And again, using that side motion into your, like we were doing those squares, is how we're going to build those circles. Right? Keep adding white to your brush and just side loading that little bit of dirtiness. Okay, so they can be a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, brick layer them a little bit, leave a little bit of space. Right? Keep adding that little bit dark edge. Okay, another stone over here. Keep chipping into the brown too. And then here you can even add just half a stone to look like it. See how it was too dark there? Just tipped a little bit more white in there to fill it in. Right? You can always just do a half a stone. Right? Make it really look like it's carrying on somewhere. Right? Over here maybe we can even do half a stone. Look. Right, a little bit brick layering so they're not right underneath each other. Right. Add more white. Try to get the brown in there. Soften it out. And pretend there's another layer. Right, so you can always go back in and define these a little bit more if you want. Okay, so it's basically all the background done. Right, I just cleaned my brush. And again, we're playing around with a bit more of the Pablo brown, white combinations to create some of these baskets. Some of them, like I made a little bit more, like the one in the front here, I made a little tiny bit more Pablo looking with the brown on the edge. Right, a little bit, just a little bit of white. Right, so if you're not sure of how you want your flower pot to look, you can definitely just lightly sketch in something. Right, so just the basic triangle shape with a little bit of an angle on it. Okay. And then a little bit of a straight line for the rim. Just trying to make it a little bit easy, and then the flowers are going to hide a lot of it too, guys, so you really don't have to worry too much about it. Right, so again, over to the side, and then close it. Turn your brush around to the other side and just loosely fill it in. Okay. Then I'm going to come down on this side of my pot with the dark and this side of my dark. Slide to close. And then what I did here was I just kind of loosely made like little stripes almost with the very subtle brown. And you can add just that little bit of brown underneath. And then in with the wet, when it's wet on wet, and you got your coverage of your Pablo in here. You're just kind of making little random streaks, a little bit on an angle. Oops. Right, to make a little bit of a pot. Okay, just make it a little bit darker. And you can even use your chisel to just make stripes too. Pick up a little bit more brown. Just a little bit more stripey look in there. Alright, so once we fill that up, it'll definitely look a little better. Right? And then same with over here, if you want to neaten this up a little bit, this is fine the way it is here. Okay, giving that a bit more coverage. It's going to be full anyways. And then we were talking about moving a pot over here. So this one here, I want to not pick up as much Pablo. I want to pick up a bit more white. Still got some Pablo in my brush, but it's going to be just a little bit more brown and white. And again, just any kind of little bowl that you want to make. Alright, so this can look a little bit more beigey brown. Alright guys, just make it simple. And then this guy here, he was a little bit more rounded. Right. I find it so much easier just to get a straighter line with your paintbrush sometimes than you do with a pencil. Okay, adding more white. In the dark, do all your drawing. And then filling it in. Right. Whenever you want to fix a line, you just have to make sure you're picking up your dark. Right. And then again, I just used my chisel Almost looking like a pumpkin. Okay, and there is a little bit of a top to it, but again, you're not going to see too much of it. With your, just put a little bit more red back in there. Right, a little bit more purple. If you want to fix anything up. Add a little bit more depth into places. Add a little bit more purple behind it. Right, so you can always play and add more shading. Right, and that's what I did over here too. Add that little bit of purple on the end, and now this is where we definitely need some floating medium. Right, so when we're adding all these little extra separations and we really want to clean things up, right, so our one side of the brush is going to be floating medium, and the other side is going to be just color, just on the tip. And we're going to mix the purple and the brown together, and you'll see that it just adds that little bit more darker purple to it. And you can come up behind anywhere that you feel like you need to deepen, add a little bit more shading. Oops. I'm not afraid to get paint on my fingers. Right? Always add more depth. A little bit of shading underneath the window. Skimp it along sometimes too, but you don't want it to look like a line. You want it to look like a shade, nice soft progression. Anywhere that you need a little extra bump or to clean up something. Try not to reach over too much. I'm reaching over with my filming. Grab some medium. Right. See how that just disappeared, and make this a line now? So I can draw a line. Anywhere you need a little bit more depth. And then I can even use them to, even that same color, right along the bottom here. A little bit in the door. Okay, even in the door. Add a little bit more brown. Like, you shouldn't see a definite purple color. You're just adding that little bit of purple into the brown, just to add a little bit more depth. door here. If you didn't go dark enough, you want to bring this dark just a little bit more out. A little bit soft around the top. See how that adds a little bit more shading there. Okay, see how that's adding more depth now, making things look a little bit cleaner looking. I went and put my brush in upside down. Fix my line around my door. And I find that I can neaten things up a lot easier this way. I don't have to stress myself out. I'm trying to get my lines all perfect in the beginning, because I know I'm going to want to add shading, and at the same time you can kind of fix things, right? Make things look a little bit more neater. And define at the same time. Always bring your shading back out after you went around it really slowly to get your nice coverage, and then wash that out a little bit. Right, so you're bringing that dark out. Right, and when you have the floating medium in there, right, a little bit of purple, brown. Then you can go straight across all these colors and just add that, set that right back, right? And you're not going to worry about affecting all these other colors, right? That's what I love about the floating medium, is for this kind of thing. It's all for shading. Right, I kind of messed up this one here. I can come in and add more depth back there. Right, it's not done until you say it's done, right? Adding all these little extra bits of cleanup, touch-ups, little extra shading. This is where it's gonna all come in really easy for you, right? So again, right around our door, we're gonna go right around our like little rainbows, right? And try to keep my hand out of the way so you guys can see. And I'm just adding that little extra shading on the back of that Pablo line. Just that subtle little bit of shading. See that? Just defined it a little bit more. gonna go down in the next row. Doesn't change your tone of color. Slowly working your way in until you're happy with that outline. Right. Just a little bit of shading down along here. And it just helps to soften the window a little bit. You can do it on both sides. Just a little bit of a glaze coat. See the difference? Okay, and even in your pillars, right? You can always define those, soften those. Set this corner of the wall back further. That little bit of brown on top of the red. Oh, yeah, I just stayed in there. Right, maybe a little bit of an inlet in there. More medium, it'll thin it out. Okay, it's too dark. A little bit of purple, a little bit of brown. Remember I said I was going to separate this. Oops, I got too much purple on there. Wipe some out. Pick up a little bit more medium. Just trying to soften those tones. And then we can add that same mixture all the way down in front of the steps. Right, sets those steps back so they look even further away. All this little extra bits of shading really helps soften things. You guys might think I'm crazy, but I hope that you guys are learning lots from the concept of adding this. Right, see how I'm just going all around everything now. Two. Right, so we want to go and do that with these steps too, right? We want to add that little bit of depth in between each of those stripes. Underneath. Add more medium. And some of them I'm doing upside down. And then right underneath that highlight. Right. Just to separate them a bit. And you don't have to go right across, guys. If you're noticing, I'm kind of like almost skimping. Right. Just clean up that line a little bit if it's crooked. Lay that brush down flat. I really like the shades that all these colors have created. Like, we don't have any of those colors that are that pinky Pablo. Right? I really like the blends that come from mixing them. Oops. I picked up white somewhere. It's just medium. The purple and the Pablo just, to me, is a really unique look, color. And the red. So a little bit more brown. Now you're playing with the variations of browns and greens and grays, right? Anything that you want to clean up or intensify. Right, put a little bit of shading right on our buckets. Right across. Right, help set that back a little bit. And we definitely want this part here to look a little darker. Right, pick up a little bit more gray. You can play with this as much as you like. Alright, guys. And then when you're ready to put some flowers and foliage in it, this is a super easy, fast, just loose blob, dab, 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 right? You can definitely go in and do a little bit more stroke work with our tree on the side. You could just use a scruffy brush if you wanted it to be, you know, just a looser tree. But definitely I wanted to play around and give you guys a couple different stroke works to play with as well. So you can play around with something a little bit more brighter with your greens, citruses, saps, a little bit of yellow ochre. Just trying to find some dry spots on my plate here, and maybe even a little bit of moon yellow, just to play around with some different variations. And a small brush, right? So we want like an 8 or a 6 or something like that to get these leaves on. I did do them fairly big. I think I had a 10 at the time, but I think maybe a little bit smaller. But we still use our 12 to get us started, right? We want to get some branches made first so we can have some placement. Again, I don't want these vibrant colors of them the way they are out of the bottle. We want to mute them. Okay, so you just see how I just touched that little bit of gray into right in the middle of my brush and blended it into both sides. Right, add a little bit of white if you want to lighten it up a little bit. But it just helps to soften, mute down those green tones so they're not so bright. Okay, so we'll start off over here, and you can just make just a very light motion with your chisel just to start getting you some placement. Some little bit of trees, a little bit of Ys. Everywhere there's a branch, there's usually another little Y, maybe a third or halfway up your tree. Alright, just loose little branches here and there. And then you can change down to a smaller brush to do the strokes. Like, it's a lot easier to make all these branches with a little bit bigger. Right, if you want more branches, and slide your chisel. Very easy with a bigger brush. But definitely when you want to make tiny little brush leaves, move down to a 6 or an 8. You can get them really tiny. You can play around with both sizes if you want to. So I'm playing around with this mixture. If you guys see how I do my tiny painting, I like to go side to side with my brush. Okay, and dip into that gray to mute it down. And still add a little tiny bit of white to lighten up your citrus a little bit. Right, if you're having a problem with your tiny brushes, I have a full course on that. I'm just going to practice again. Right, so you can start off at the top, work your way down. Right, adding little leaves. Second time I do paintings, I always look at them and say, well, what didn't I like about it? And, you know, is there something that I can change or modify or do something a little bit differently? Right? You don't know until you see the results of it. And then you can always make little variations. I'm trying to get some a little bit lighter ones, add a little bit more white. Put them in different directions. I have to keep adding gray once in a while. But we have family day around the corner, right? So I thought, well, something that kind of signifies coming home. Maybe grandma has an entry like this, or your mom, or aunt and uncles that you're visiting. Right, so I was just trying to come up with something that was just a warm, welcome home kind of feel. Right, let's get those leaves all in different directions. Right, some of them don't even have to be right on the branch. I'm just having fun with them, working my way out and down. Right, a couple different variations of color. Got a big branch here. I'm gonna make it look a little smaller. Anything you don't like, you say, put a leaf on it. Alright, so I just wanted to do something a little bit easy for you guys there. Add a few more branches if you like. Adding a little bit more depth down at the bottom here. Nice. And then we can go and dab some colors into our pots. I will work on this one over here. And what I did was here was just kind of just dabbing, dab, 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 work your way down, little plants. Right, some of them went down. Right, as long as you have two colors on your brush, kind of popping out. Right, just little dabbies, a little bit of a separation there. For some taller ones over here. And just getting the foundation, the feel of it with your greens first. And some's gonna come down. Maybe some will come around in the middle here. Right, play around with a little bit more yellow ochre instead of citrus. Right in the middle here. So I started to play around with all my greenery a little at a time. Right, so I got my greens on my brush. Maybe just a little bit of yellow ochre here and there. Just a little bit of a round little bush. Alright, and then here again, how big do you want it? Right, start off with some darker shades. So you're working away around, this is about the shape and size. All right, so now we want to add dips and dots of darker areas. Just dip and dab. Right, just keep turning your brush around, adding little bits of color, the corners of it. And I wanted a couple little sprays down on the side and maybe a little bit in the middle. Off to the side, and then I did a couple little sprays off the side here. Okay, so we're happy with all our green. Right. Don't worry about the little spaces. Sometimes you want to keep spaces in between so that where you can dab a brighter color, it'll pick it up a little bit nicer if you're dabbing on a lighter area. Okay. So what I want to do is come over and grab you can go and get an 8 or a different size brush if you want. A little bit bigger. But I'm just grabbing just a little bit of white on the end here now. And I would just want to make some of these flowers maybe look a little bit brighter white. Right. Adding a little bit of brighter color here and there. And then you can come over and grab a little bit of moon yellow. Again, just adding just different colors into this one. Dipping little bits of brighter yellow now. You can use a little bit of red in there. You can use whatever color you want. Technically in Canada right now, we don't have anything growing on our porch. We got snow going on. But you know, you never know. Maybe you went down south somewhere to visit somebody. Get away from all this snow. Alright, so just grab your colors a little bit at a time, slowly going a little bit lighter and brighter. Right, adding a little bit of white to them too sometimes helps. I did pick up a little bit of red here and there too, or a little bit of Pablo to get a little bit more warmer shades of different flowers. And it's just a mixture, nice mixture of colors. Just a little bit of dab, a little bit of, definitely dirty brush. Right, I just, whatever, when I run out of color, I just go and pick up another color. Right, make these a little bit different. And just dabbing using the corner of my brush. Right, maybe a little bit brighter here on the porch. A little bit of white with that. Dab, dab, dab. Right, it's just no science to it at all, guys. Right. Maybe a little bit more red here. Or Pablo. Combinations of. Little dabs. And let's see how you feel. I'm adding just a little bit more white in spots, brighten things up a bit. And then just keep playing with all your shading, right? It's a matter of being happy with your lines. If you need to add a little bit more anywhere. Definitely using a bigger brush I find helps as well. Trying to find some brown here. I'm running out of brown. Alright, just mixing those colors together. And then we can also soften down here. This is just looking too clean. Alright, and just doing a wash over it, guys. Just to dirty it up a little bit. If you want to go over and define anything again, you can. But I'm just kind of making it look like it's been around for a while. And then also setting this back further. A little bit more shading, distortion. Oh, what do you think, guys, of the second version? I always got to change it up a little bit for you, right? Again, this should be a little bit further back. Make it look further. Right, so you can always, once you got your flowers in there, you can always go and tweak it. Soften this up a little bit so it looks like it's further away. Anything that you want to look further away. Right? Make it darker. And then even around your flowers, guys, you see how this is looking very, very clean. I'm adding just a little bit more floating medium. And now I'm going to add more shading behind my flowers, just loosely behind, here and there. Right? As normally there would be. Right? Anywhere that you feel like you need to darken a little bit more. I guess I'm saying that a lot tonight. Because this is what this is all about, is just keep adding that dimension. I really personally love all this playing and shading. I love one stroke to get to the point, and then adding those little extra tiny little bits of detail. You know, just makes it just go one more shade of life. Right, I'm just trying to make this little peachy pink kind of color that we had earlier. Right, so anywhere that I wasn't happy with, see right here's a little bit dirty. I just come in and clean that up a little bit. Adds a little bit more highlight to it. And if everything is all nice and dry, then definitely you can always just erase a little bit here and there. And just kind of fixing things. Anything that I don't like. Right, play with all the colors and tones of mixtures together. And yeah, a lot of it is just remnants erased. Right? One way or another, we're going to get those color blends in. Slow down. And I hope you have fun with it. Try not to take it so seriously. Right. Getting those colors in, blending together. I think it's the way the shading went on. The door is open a little bit on the left side. Looks cool. Yeah, definitely. Art is can be very much like that. What one person sees can definitely look different from another person's perspective. And depending on what kind of door it was, maybe that is creaked in a little bit open. Right, and then I have the flowers here so you didn't see no handle. Right, the door handle's hiding. So if you really want to put one in there, maybe we can just put an illusion of a circle in there. Right, mixing your browns and greens, mixing your purples, all your opposites of colors. Okay, so this is green sitting on the browns. I'm going to try to put a little bit of a handle there. I don't know. I just played around with the door there. It's too big. Right, so one of the biggest things I wanted, hopefully, for you guys to see is how black that looks. And I didn't put any black in here at all. Playing around with your contrasting colors, right? The things that are against each other in the color wheel. Right, that purple and the green is definitely gonna playing around layering with that. Playing around with the purples and the browns and the grays. The greens and the purples are definitely gonna make brown. Right, so you're getting all those rich colors from playing your complementary as well as opposites together. Right, and then of course your liner brush with whatever color you like to put your signature on. Anyways, so if you have any problems at all, you know, you can just send me pictures of your process along the way, and I can maybe see how I can guide you through a picture, or you'll share them when you're done. Hopefully you'll really like this one. Maybe make your flowers a little bit different if you like different colors. Use different brushes if you like. Use just your liner brush and do little dots, dabbies with them. You can do that. You could use your tiny little scruffy brush if you felt like you wanted to have a little bit different look. Let's see what this yellow is. Right, so we can do this one just very, very lightly, guys. You gotta really touch it small. Right, especially on this little thing. Right, we want all our dabs to look a little tiny bit different. Then definitely go and grab, you know, different brushes to do that with different plants. And I want this one to look a little darker. Anything you don't like. I gotta go over that with a 6 again. Get my brushes too wet. Right. Yeah? Get some thumbs up there. You like this version? Yes. I have a hard time making the same thing twice. And especially with these colors, like really loosely mixing like that, definitely you're gonna get lots of different variations. But I just love the reds and the Pablos mixed together with that little tiny bit of purple.
Yes, thanks, Mandy. It was great.
Yeah.
Learned a lot of shading techniques.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was definitely my goal for this one.